Hi guys, back again. So I'm going to try to clear up any questions you had with the trigonometry assignment from yesterday. The main concepts you should have learned is that the sine, cosine, and tangent are used to help you find the lengths of sides or the angles of right triangles. So the sine of an angle is the length of, the, think about it, opposite side of a right triangle divided by the length of the hypotenuse. And the calculator will give you that ratio once you tell it what the angle is. The cosine is the length of the adjacent side over the length of the hypotenuse. And then the tangent is the length of the opposite side over the length of the adjacent side. Okay, usually you don't see it written out that way. Usually, just to abbreviate, they'll say the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and then the tangent is the opposite side over the adjacent side. And like you learned yesterday, and I'm sure your parents even remember this, is that the word SOHCAHTOA can help you remember those ratios. So for example, this first part tells you that the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Okay? This will make more sense once we do a couple of examples, I bet. So, some important things to remember is these formulas will only work in a right triangle. And you should remember that the hypotenuse is always across from where? The right angle. Okay? Just a couple of other things to remember. The questions usually ask for you to round to the nearest unit. Make sure if it says to the round to the nearest tenth, you're rounding to the nearest tenth or to the nearest whole number. Okay? You got to be careful about that. And there's no way you're going to do these without a graphing calculator, so make sure you have it right now. Okay. I'm going to do a couple of these with you, and then I'm going to let you do a couple. If I want to, it doesn't tell me to, but it should say solve for x. The first thing I want you to do, take your time, I'm not going to give you that much work, is label your side. So here I am, I'm standing at the 52-degree angle, which means this is my opposite side. Across from the 90-degree angle is my hypotenuse. And then the 14 here is my adjacent side. Now, the way I decide which function to use is I'm given 14 and I want to solve for x. So I care about the adjacent side and I care about the hypotenuse. Go back up. Look, which one of those functions has to do with the adjacent side and the hypotenuse? Adjacent and hypotenuse means I should use cosine. Okay, so come back down here. It's always, like the video said yesterday, it's always the cosine of the angle theta equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So what I want you to do is fill in what you know. I know that the angle is 52 degrees. I know that the adjacent side is 14, and I want the hypotenuse. Okay? Now, if I were to solve for x, I could, right, if I want to get x by itself. I don't like having x in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply both sides by x. I mean, that's still not getting x by itself, but we're getting closer. Okay, so now I have x times the cosine of 52 equals 14. To get x by itself, divide both sides by the cosine of 52 degrees. Now, we should be able to put this into our calculator. Okay, pick up your calculator. I can't show you this, unfortunately, at the same time. So I'm going to make sure I have a calculator page open. I'm going to go to my calculator page. I'm going to make sure degrees are in the upper corner so I know I'm dealing in degrees. So I'm going to type in, I'm going to make a fraction. In the numerator, I'm going to put 14. In the denominator, I'm going to hit that trig button. Over to cosine. And then in parentheses, I'm going to put 52. Okay? So this is what you are typing into the calculator. If I hit enter, oops, what's going on here? If I hit enter, I get that x, I didn't tell you what to round to, x is equal to 22.7. Okay? I should have said around to the nearest tenth. Were you able to get that in your calculator? Okay, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to skip to number 3 down here. Okay. First step, draw my little person. You might not be drawing him anymore. Label my sides. Opposite, hypotenuse, which doesn't look like I care about, and 19 is the adjacent side. So, once again, I care about the opposite side, and I care about the adjacent. Nothing's on the hypotenuse side, so I don't need it. Scroll back up. Figure out which trig function I'm using with the opposite and the adjacent. Opposite and the adjacent. Oh, this one, tangent has to do with the opposite and the adjacent. So set that up. So I'm going to say the tangent of 22 degrees equals the opposite over the adjacent. This one's even easier to solve because if I multiply both sides by 19, I get that 19 times the tangent of 22 equals x. Get that handy calculator out and type this in. Okay? I'm going to get my calculator. I'm going to write 19 times, hit that trig button, the tangent of 22 degrees. I'm going to get that x equals 7.7. If you're not getting that, make sure in your settings it's changed to degrees and not radians. Okay, so there's 2 more on this page. There's 4 more on the next page. If you are having trouble with 2 and 4, don't do the rest of them. I don't want you to do them incorrectly. Try them. If you think you got it, do all of them. If you're having trouble, wait until the Zoom office hours, and then you can ask me there. Okay? I hope you guys are all doing well. And I'll talk to you during office hours.